Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome to the start of another reading vlog. So it is officially the first full week of October and I decided to celebrate the beginning of the spooky season with a fun spooky book related challenge. I have a lot of books on my TBR that I feel like are full of atmosphere. Some of them are horror novels. And I thought, you know what, for the first week of October, I'm gonna challenge myself to read as many as I possibly can and just fully immerse myself into fall vibes, watch some spooky movies, just overall enjoy this time of year. Without further ado, let's chat about my huge TBR I have for this week. So this is my stack of books. I wanted to give myself options. Matilda's even getting into the spirit of the season with her toy choice for this morning. But I wanted to give myself just a lot of choices so I can just make sure I'm always interested in what I'm picking up. The first book I have on my TBR is The Library of the Dead. This is like a first book to a fun, ghost-centered mystery story. Our main character is a ghost whisperer and basically gets involved in some sort of crime that's happening in the city of Edinburgh where she lives. Then I have The Book Eaters, which is an atmospheric and strange story about a group of people that literally eat books for sustenance. Then I have The Hacienda, which is like a Rebecca, Jane Eyre-esque horror story in the aftermath of the Mexican War of Independence. Then I have Between Two Fires, which is a medieval fantasy horror story about an unlikely crew of people traversing the land to try to save the world. And then lastly, we have The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which is just a story about a book club trying to solve some murders, and it sounds delightful. So obviously my TBR for this video is huge. I, again, just kind of wanted to have a large selection to just make sure whatever I'm reading is what is the most interesting to me. To start out this video, I think I'm gonna pick up The Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu. I just feel like I'll be able to fly through this. It's not very long. And then alongside that, I actually downloaded the audiobook for The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I've heard good things about the story. I feel like the audiobook is gonna be great. Weather in Texas is also finally beautiful in the mornings, and I've been loving like walking around my neighborhood and enjoying all the Halloween decorations, and I feel like this will be great to listen to just while I'm working and doing other things around the house. So these are the first two books I've decided to pick up, but I am really hoping to read quite a bit this week. I'm feeling very motivated. So hopefully that results in me getting a bunch of reading done. So I've just been vibing, working on my puzzle before lunch, listening to the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying a Vampire, and like honestly, let's chat about it. So I breezed through the first 5 chapters of this book, and I am not only like loving the story, it's so engaging, but the audiobook is incredible. The narrator, everything about it, and it's just so engaging. I had a feeling the audiobook would be good, and wow, it is completely delivering. But again, 50 pages, almost 60 pages I have read of this book so far, and this follows our main character, Patricia, and she basically is tired. She's kind of living an unfulfilled life. She's a housewife, just generally very underappreciated. Her kids are growing up. They're reaching that stage where they hate their parents and, you know, kind of growing and finding their own space. Her husband's a workaholic and she's just like never really having time for herself. Until one day, like she kind of joins this book club with these women. They all get really close. They all find like connection in their love for true crime, all of these things. The book is set in the 80s in Charleston. So it has that like very Reagan/Bush era suburban culture, and then that in itself just creates a really fascinating scenario. And the concept is these women began to investigate a string of murders / kidnappings that are happening in town, and they think it might be a vampire. The opening of this book, the author actually described kind of like putting two very unlikely things together, like unlikely characters who don't really get a lot of space or appreciation, like so like a housewife in a very like gruesome setting, but in some ways like women have lived gruesome lives in aspects, like they bring children into the world, like all of these things can be brutal but aren't really talked about. So she's putting them in like different, more intense, brutal situations. And so far the writing is so engaging. All of the women, just the dialogue, it's really snappy, it reads really quick. And again, the audiobook I feel like it's just enhancing all of that, and I'm just really enjoying it. I am about to start lunch, but luckily it's very easy. I'm just heating up a soup and making some bread, so I'm going to listen to more of my audiobook and then get back to work. But it has been such a delightful break. There's one thing I love in this world. It's a pre-made whole food soup. Guys, I have been listening to, where is it? The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying a Vampire, like all day while I've been working. And I've listened to over 100 pages of this book. Continuing to love the audiobook style, the narrator and everything, and the book is really gripping. We've been introduced to this mysterious new figure in town, which is definitely giving like suspicious vampire vibes and is making our main character Patricia very intrigued, but it's also really putting to test all of her Southern etiquette, if you know what I mean. Also, what's good, well, successful, I should say, is like the horror elements. It's like all of these like normal household scenes, like there are some like disturbing moments like so far that are just like slowly interspersed. And the author can write the visual aspect of it really well. Like shot and like hearing it being told to me, I'm kind of like, ooh, again, I am a chicken, so like things scare me really easily, but some of the disturbing scenes in this, I'm like creeped out, or like I can feel the intensity, or it's very like visual, visceral experience. So far so good. And I think like that paired with like the suburbia small town vibe is just like very successful, and it's very addicting. This book is addicting. So I've already read 100 pages. I do need to get ready because I'm actually starting a pottery class tonight. I'm doing like a 6-week pottery class with my friends. So that's actually 3 hours. So a lot of my evening I'm going to be doing at the pottery studio, which I won't really vlog. I might vlog a bit, but I'm trying to use that time to like stay off my phone, if you will, you know? So, but when I get back though, I'm going to make a quick dinner. Clay and I probably watch House of the Dragon, and then I'm going to start my second book, which I'm really looking forward to, which is the Edinburgh like ghost talker one. But so far so great. I can't wait to take a walk tomorrow morning and listen to this. It's reminding me like how much I love audiobooks and like certain genres, especially that I love to listen to on audio, and this is that, like horror or like it just has a storytelling element, like around the campfire kind of vibe, and it just works so well. Lucy threw some incredible pots. I had to get a lot. I was a teacher's pet. I am absolutely covered in clay. But I am back home, successful first class, and I am gonna make some boxed mac and cheese. The water is on. I'm gonna get changed to some clean clothes, hang out with Clay for a little bit, get back to reading. Yum. And I'm gonna pair this up with a bake-off, and then I'm gonna get back into reading. It's already pretty late because my class went for a little while. Hello, friends. Okay, so I'm in bed. I'm about to start The Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu. Again, this is my more busy night because I had my 3-hour pottery class, which was such a delight. I feel like I don't know, I feel like I like learned. It was cool to do something with my hands and just learn a new skill, because I wouldn't really consider myself artistic in any way, shape, or form, so it's exciting to like try something new. But now I'm going to read, and I'm definitely going to listen more of my audiobook tomorrow too, because I'm such a fan. In the next few days I'm going to get much more reading in as well, but nonetheless, I'm going to read now, and I'll check in with you guys in the morning. Good morning. It's early. I'm dressed because Clay and I are starting the day. Clay's already out there actually with yard work. So an exciting Tuesday morning adventure. Our favorite machine. Yard work is done, and have a cup of coffee. I'm gonna sit and do some reading, get to work afterwards, but I didn't get to read much of The Library of the Dead until I fell asleep, but the opening did really engage me. It's very spunky, I guess is like a good word for it, so I think I'm gonna be able to read it quickly, but I'm gonna read more now. I did also want to quickly say I did listen to more of the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying a Vampire whilst I was working last night. I think I'm on like chapter 13 or 14. I'm flying through that book. It's so engaging. And I've also heard that the Hacienda, which is also in my TBR for this video, has a fantastic audiobook too, which tracks because it's so atmospheric that I'm about downloading that as well. I'm just like, I guess this week is my audiobook kick week, so here we are. Hello, I am dressed and about to film, but I wanted to do a reading update first of The Library of the Dead. I read a quick 100 pages of this book this morning, and I feel like I'm gonna easily fly through this when I have more time to read. This narrative's pulled me in. Like, I don't know if this is gonna be like a 5-star read, but it's definitely proving to be entertaining. This story is set in Edinburgh, and it's an urban fantasy story. It's set in a world where I think the interaction with ghosts are more common in society, and it also seems like Edinburgh has had, or the world, I don't know if it's the world or just Edinburgh, has had a bit of a decline, let's say. Like, things that were once easily accessible are less so, like the city is more dangerous and a little dirtier. And that's where we find our main character, Ropa, who in this book is only 14, and she's actually dropped out of school to help pay the bills, support her family, all of those things. And she does this by talking to ghosts. She is a ghost whisperer, which essentially is she talks to ghosts and then she delivers messages on their behalf to like their loved ones and stuff, paid by their families for sending these messages. It can be like, I love you so much, goodbye, see you in the afterlife, to like complicated legal battles and wills and the like. It's pretty entertaining in that regard. At the beginning of this book though, she starts to investigate a kind of an inquiry by one of the ghosts, and she realizes that something is happening to some children in the town, and that is like they're being left as like lifeless husks. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And it's just honestly like really entertaining and fast-paced. I love being in Ropa's head. She's like very spunky and direct, and like her navigating these mysteries and also like just how she communicates with people around her. She's very endearing and likable. Like, I like her approach to getting what she needs. She's very headstrong, and that shines through this book. It's interesting because this is not middle grade, but I think because her age and the author's like writing from her point of view, it feels like it has elements of middle grade, but it's definitely like an adult fantasy book. And so far it's just really endearing and charming, and I'm excited to see where this continues to take us. The mystery has already kind of shown itself, so I'm curious to see how that's going to wrap up. A perfect fall read, lots of atmosphere, so I will be finishing this hopefully today. I want to say I am 150 pages into the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, and this book is continuing to entertain me too. The audiobook, again, is so good. And I think what I like about this book too is that I feel like it's really successfully captured this time and place. Obviously you do have this group of women who are the main characters, but like it is the early 90s in the South. So there is a lot of problematic things that are kind of happening in this book just naturally. Like, there's a lot of blatant like sexism and racism, common trend amongst these women and just in society in general, where people are like polite to a fault. Like, they call it polite, but they purposefully ignore red flags and clear signs of trouble if it's not impacting their family. And truthfully, like, oh, it seems like it would be worse to expose a hard truth than actually like confront and try to help someone. And that is like honestly the environment in which something like a vampire could thrive off of. Like, this societal preference to ignorance is bliss, but in reality it's like a bunch of privileged people turning their eye in another direction while other people are being hurt and not really confronting the issue until it's directly impacting their family. Like, the hallmarks of like white suburbia to a T. And that is definitely what this book is set in. And we're kind of watching women who are entrenched in this culture like interact within this. And obviously it's just kind of interesting to see them interact with each other and with their own families, like ignore red flags within their own families, like absentee fathers, like all of this stuff is really of the time, if that makes sense. And it's just honestly, like, I think pretty cleverly put together. It adds to the horror setting, I think, well, because it's not just like some random vampire. Like, this random vampire is like also feeding off the time and place that this book is set in as well. And that's like all part of like the larger scheme of what's going on. And I think that element, the social political injustices of the time period and of this place that honestly persists to this day, I think is going to be a large part of how this book is going to unfold. At least that's my guess. I think it's going to be involved because it has to be involved. You know what I mean? Anyway, reading it fast. So far I've read 250 pages and I'm for sure gonna read more now, but I'm going to film a video and I will check in with you guys later. I will say listening to this book while making lunch was a mistake. Horror does not pair well with wanting to eat food, at least for me. My monster bag of carrots. We're making curry, folks. It is far from dinner time, but, whoa, that was so ungraceful. I don't look cool. It's far from dinner time, but this takes a little while to cook. And this used to cook for like 2 hours, so we are starting now. I know this just kind of looks like a soup, but I have sauteed the onions, browned the beef. I'm just gonna let this cook for like an hour. Add the potatoes in, cook it for another hour, add the curry, and then it's all gonna come together and it's gonna be delicious. I read a few recipes and I'm trialing some new things. Like I added some red wine and I used half beef stock, half water to add a little more depth. But I'm excited. I love Japanese curry. It's just the ultimate comfort food. So I'm gonna let this boil. I'm gonna skim some of the fat off the top and then leave it, cook it, eat it. One of my favorite recipes. Finished up work. I've poured myself a glass of wine and I am going to sit and read more of The Library of the Dead. So, cheers. Curry is done. Bon appetit. It is absolutely going down. Hey everyone, so I've just been relaxing, actually paused. The first fake fireplace session of the season. But I've passed the 150 page mark of The Library of the Dead and I'm really liking this book. I'm honestly pretty hooked to the story. Like I'm curious with the mystery and I think it has everything to do with like our main character and how it's narrated. She is like quick. Like we are moving scene to scene to scene with her. Like she's processing and reacting so fast and she's also like a little reckless. So like there's very little ruminating. There's very little overthinking. Like she is just like jumping from place to place and idea out of. And part of this is just due to necessity. Part of it's due to her personality, but it makes for it to be very fast moving and entertaining. Also, the fantasy world is interesting too. Like, as I kind of already mentioned, it's like an urban fantasy, but it's almost like a post-apocalyptic setting too. Like, she constantly references something called the Great Catastrophe, which changed Edinburgh or Scotland forever. I don't know if this catastrophe has impacted the world or just the city. It's just very interesting. And this catastrophe has kind of added this like post-apocalyptic vibe, like resources are more limited, food is more limited, fuel is more limited. The idea, but yeah, we're basically just following our main character as she's shifting from job to job, as well as kind of investigating this mystery surrounding these kids a bit more. You also get some view into Ropa's past, like her training, her magic comes from her grandmother, and her grandmother has kind of taught her everything she knows. And she's also kind of learning about this library that exists where other magic users are. And it's interesting again because magic users in this world are like established, like you can get licensed if you have for different types of magic. I think there's like societies for people, so I think she might be inadvertently getting involved in one, which is very classic, this main character. But yeah, the book is entertaining. I wouldn't say it's like mind-boggling, but the main character is like so endearing that she carries the story really well, and the ghost elements and everything about it just provide such great ambiance. I plan on reading more tonight. I think I'll finish this tomorrow morning actually and move on to my third book of this vlog. I feel like I'm flying through all these stories. All of them are like thrilling and entertaining, all the above, which we love to see. But Clay just got home from his baseball game, so I think we're gonna watch an episode of something and then I will get back to reading on our morning walkabout. Forgot to charge my mug, so we have to use a non-chargeable mug, which is great, which is spectacular. We love a rainbow in this house. But I just have to drink my coffee at a much faster speed than I'm accustomed to. But coffee apprehended, let's go do some reading. Hi friends, so happy to report I finished my first book of the vlog, The Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu. I finished it this morning and this was absolutely a wild ride from beginning to end. Super fast paced, and honestly, like, I feel a little repetitive in all of my thoughts and feelings. The mystery really evolved, and I would definitely say the ending too kept the door open to like a much larger mystery. Like, we definitely just dealt with a sub-boss, not the main boss, which I think is really intriguing. And I know this is the first book to a series, and I also feel like this could be like many books, like definitely serialized fiction vibes, especially because our main character kind of has a lot of things left to experience. Like, she's just started her magical education. She's just starting to make some of these closer friendship connections to other characters we've met in the book. And like, all of these things can be explored more deeply in like later installments, and that is really exciting. The success of this book, I would definitely say, rides on just how likable our main character is. She's smart, she is daring, she's like all of these things, and I think the world is also a really interesting place to watch her explore. I wouldn't say any aspect of the plot was like mind-boggling, but it was interesting. Like, the overall mystery and the big reveal at the end, like, I found it to be very satisfying. I also appreciated the family dynamics in this book. Our main character is obviously really close to her family. She has a lot of responsibility on her shoulders, and just, I don't know, rooting for her was just so easy, and it was just like delightful. Like, she was such a great character to follow, which made this book very, very just fun to read. So that means I've actually read over 500 pages so far for this vlog, and it's only Wednesday morning. Where is it? I have the next book I want to read already picked out, and it's another horror story, and that is Between Two Fires by Christopher Bowman. This again is a medieval fantasy horror story. I think I'll read this really quickly too. I'm on a roll with horror. I feel like I already have a little bit of nightmares, so might as well just keep that rolling. And then the last book I hope to get to is still the Hacienda, and I feel like I'm going to download the audiobook for this because I've heard such good things. But I'm already starting my third book of the vlog. I feel like I'm having great success, but I'm going to take a break now, make some lunch, get some work done, all of the above. A classic snack plate for lunch. It's me. It's a few hours later. You wouldn't know that, but now it's time finish this puzzle. So I'm gonna put my audiobook on, I'm gonna have some coffee, I'm gonna decompress. I had a stressful few hours, and so I've decided the best way to alleviate that is to puzzle. So that's what we're gonna do. All right, let's listen to the audiobook. Great news, I finished my puzzle. Well, I somehow am missing 3 pieces of it, but that's all right. We love a cute little haunted house moment. Also wanted to say I've read now over 200 pages of the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying a Vampire, which is over like 6 hours of the audiobook. And oh my gosh, the horror aspect of the book is horrifying. There's this particular scene with rats that I'll never stop thinking about, but I still don't think it's too bad. That I feel like a lot of people would be able to stomach it because I am a wimp. But the horror in combination to all the societal stuff in this book, it's so infuriating. Like, oh, it just creates the environment where all this evil can thrive because it's also evil. Like the sexism, the racism, the systemic issues, the police not investigating, people not believing each other, like women being dismissed by their husbands, communities of color being ignored and then criminalized when asking for help. Like, everything is also a great representation of small southern suburban communities in the 90s, and honestly is still very much present today. So it like creates 2 types of eeriness, like the obvious horror and the disruption and the violence, but then also like the society violence that goes alongside it. And our main characters and her friends are not absent from this. They are problematic themselves, and you really see all of the influences of that within this story. And I gotta tell you, it's a wild time. And like, I'm very curious to see if I'm gonna continue to like it throughout the end. Like, obviously it depends how the author sort of sticks the landing, if you will, but I think this sort of balance, this horror I feel from the characters and the vampire and the violence are like hand in hand at this point, which is interesting. But now I'm gonna take a bit of a break. I'm gonna watch Game of Thrones with Clay tonight, eat more Japanese curry, start my other book, but we're making great progress in terms of reading. So yeah. And a bon appetit. Just watched episode 7 of House of the Dragon and it was definitely the best episode so far. So good. I feel like I'm officially like very addicted to this show. In bed, and we are starting Between Two Fires right now. Wish me luck that it's not too scary. Hello friends, up and Adam this morning. I bought some brown corduroy overalls for the fall. I only read about 50 pages of Between Two Fires, but I can already say I'm loving this book, that we're going to start reading it right away this morning as well. But first, a cup of coffee is required. Hi, so I have just been doing a variety of things, but one of those things is I've read over 100 pages of Between Two Fires, and that is essentially the first part of this book. And I'm obsessed with this book. And the other thing I heard about this book is that this also has an incredible audiobook, which honestly, like every book on my TBR I feel like has an incredible audiobook, and I'm so torn because I want to read all of these books at once. That being said though, this is a story that follows our 3 main characters, all very different, but kind of brought together under one quest led by a young girl who seemingly talks to angels. One of the main characters is a brutal knight with like a dark past. He's covered in blood. The other is a priest who kind of drowns his sorrows in wine after losing his entire parish. And then lastly, a very strange like young girl who connects them all, and they begin sort of traversing through the plague-torn countryside of France. The writing is incredible immediately. Christopher Bowman has such a way with making like such dark situations feel dark, and you feel the intensity of those situations, but also such great banter and humor between characters. I've laughed out loud multiple times reading this book, and again, it's all very dark what's going on. Christopher Bowman also writes like horror really well and like dark combat that's also like disgusting, and this sort of combination just works so well with the setting, which is again like France during the Black Plague. You can definitely see within the characters it's also about like redemption and revival, and like all of these characters kind of clinging to humanity and like hope for humanity, and it's working really well so far. I'm intrigued by their journey. I love how they all kind of interact with each other. It reads super fast, and I can also see why this would have a great audiobook because of the character interactions, and the back and forth banter would probably be hilarious to listen to. It's great. I love it. I guess I'm like into horror now. It's as long as it's not too scary. Like I like horror when it's more gruesome and less like jump scary, if that makes sense. And all the books I've read definitely have a combination of both, but I'm realizing I can kind of stomach some elements of like really gruesome and bloody scenes. And this definitely has that, but it's also like endearing. Never thought I would use that word, but this is endearing. I'm gonna read more. I read the first 100 pages so quickly, and this combination is proving to be a winner. Like, I was obsessed with this after the first page, which you can't always say with every book you pick up. Lunch today is some crispy roasted potatoes, which I'm gonna top with some chili. I don't know, sounded like a good combination. I did not make this chili. This chili is from Whole Foods, God bless. Alrighty friends, I've decided I've earned some time to go read outside, so let's go enjoy some nice Texas fall weather. Sometimes you just need Panda Express and Great British Baking Show. We've moved on to Lord of the Rings. I also owe y'all a reading update because I have read over 50% of my book and it's so good, but first I have to watch Rings of Power because that is my priority, #1 priority. Hi friends, I'm about to snuggle up in bed and read more of Between Two Fires. I hope to read another 100 pages tonight because friends, I have been reading this book so quickly. It's just so interesting. Like obviously I've already talked about how the characters and the banter and the grouping is working really successfully. Also, I feel like the author does a great job of kind of bringing together unlikely characters that come from very different backgrounds. Also, the horror elements of this book are really cool too. Obviously, there is a lot of religious allegory present in the story. One of our main characters is a priest, another is a girl who sees angels, but it's not just like all story. It does seem like there are some like demons and fallen angels at play here. There's actually many different monsters our characters have interacted with, and all of them kind of seem ripped from the pages of some sort of like Catholic horror story, if you know what I mean. And I think it's a really interesting intersect, and it's like everyone is so fearful during this time period because they don't really understand, one, the disease, but also like everyone around them is dying and they feel like God has abandoned them. And then you have these like horrifying monsters kind of roaming the land and like terrorizing the people, on top of the humans who are also terrorizing the people, on top of the plague that's also terrorizing the people. So there's just a lot happening here, and it's a really interesting like angle for the horror, and it's spooky, and there's a lot of different flavors they're going with here. And it's gruesome. It's very gruesome. Christopher Bowman can write a gruesome story. Very, very violent, to say the least. But again, I'm just flying through it. It's set up like a quest, which generally structure-wise is one of my favorite ways to approach a fantasy story. I love all the different stops and obstacles that characters have to go through to achieve their goal. And the fun thing about this book, I guess fun is maybe used loosely here, is that I don't even know what the goal is, and neither does most of the characters. Everyone's just following this young girl to the city because she was told to do so by an angel, and that is all we know. So I'm gonna read more. My goal is to obviously finish this tomorrow and start my 4th horror book of this vlog, which I cannot believe how successful I was in terms of reading this week. Maybe horror is a genre I need to read more of, because clearly I read it quickly. But anyway, time to read, then it's time for sleep. And cheers, things are going well. Matilda being extra cute this morning, but we have coffee and my book, which I am going to attempt to finish now so I can start book 4 of this vlog today. Hi, look, I even got dressed already this morning, but I am in the true home stretch of this novel. I am well over the 300 page mark, and I'm just loving this book. It's the perfect combination of like brutal, bloody, scary, horror, like this sort of really interesting mashup of Black Plague and like religious creepiness, and then a group of very endearing characters that are like going on a quest together. I've grown so attached to everyone. In fact, I got a little emotional at one point in this book. I don't know, I like the use of tropes. I love a redemption arc, and there's lots of redemption in this, and like renewal and faith and like forgiveness, all of this stuff like very much intertwined within the book itself. And I don't know, I'm just really liking the story, and I'm curious to see how it's going to end up. I'm not sure, but I'm just gonna keep trucking along. I'm gonna try to finish this book right now. I have 100 pages left. It is like 430 pages, which is great. It's great. These hellish monsters are creepy as all heck, and there's such variety. We have such a variety of things to be scared of in this book, which I will say, my dreams last night, a little weird. A little weird. I finished my 2nd completed book for this vlog, which means like 430, 700. I've read over 1,000 pages. Between Two Fires was so good, lived up to all the hype that I feel like I gave it. It's definitely a weird book. It's definitely a strange experience, but honestly, I love a weird fantasy quest story. This had humor, this had heart, it was gruesome, it was very dark, but yet I was hooked immediately. I guess I'm like 10 out of 10 a horror fan now, but this was such a delight, which means, hold on, I'm about to start my 4th book of this video, which is the Hacienda. I'm actually also going to download the audiobook of this, as I think I'm going to tag team this experience. This is a Rebecca Jane Eyre gothic story set in the aftermath of the Mexican War of Independence, following our main character who marries for like safety, but then her new home is like haunted. People are gaslighting her. There might be ghosts, like a classic setup. One of my favorite setups, if I'm being honest. So I'm gonna start this now. I'm hoping to get a good amount of the way through this. I don't think I'll be able to finish this afternoon, but I've already read 1,000 pages of horror, so Might as well keep the party going, you know? Matilda has stolen my seat. But I was gonna get some reading in before I braked to cook some lunch. And lunch is served. Hi friends, and welcome to the end of the vlog. I feel like this is one of those vlogs that I could just keep going and going and going on because I'm having such great success. But once I hit my reading goal of 100 pages in the Hacienda, I thought it was a good time to call it. So just to quickly wrap up what I've read, I read 100 pages, 320 pages to 420. This is 330, so that's 750. 434 pages, so 784 plus 400, 1,184 pages, which is so many more pages than I thought I was actually able to get to. And I honestly loved every single book, but the book I want to quickly start with is the book I've done the least amount of check-ins in, which is The Hacienda. I've already immediately downloaded the audiobook for this because the writing is stunning, so atmospheric, so dark, so brooding, and just heavy with like anticipation. This is like the gothic horror ghost story that I wanted the death of Jane Lawrence to be, and that just completely flopped. I have really high hopes that this is gonna wrap up to be incredible because the first 100 pages were amazing. Again, this follows our main character Beatrice, and she is in a really tough spot. Her father was executed during the Mexican War of Independence, and she is kind of looking for a marriage to find safety in. So she kind of accepts the first proposal she gets from a rich, young, handsome man. But once she arrives at his estate, she realizes that something feels off, like the house is ominous. He also has a sister who lives on the property, and they also seemingly hate each other. There's just a lot of discomfort, and she begins to see things around the property, and everyone's just kind of trying to make her think like it's all in her head. Again, the writing is amazing. Beatrice as a main character really roots this tale and story. Feel her desperation, one, for this whole situation to work out, but then as she begins to see more and more creepy things around her, like desperation to confirm that she's not losing her mind. It's so good. The writing, everything, the atmosphere, the gothic horror story I wanted, it is completely delivering. And obviously I read all of Between Two Fires for Christopher Bowman. Weird medieval quest horror story, lots of religious allegory in this, great characters, great banter, also very, very disturbing. Really interesting book that I really didn't know like where it was going at any point, which kept me really on my toes. Lots of heart. Christopher Bowman, I feel like, writes such a great mashup of things. I really loved his other book, The Black-Tongued Thief, and this proved to be another really successful book as well. Obviously, I also read the entirety of The Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu, a really fun, kind of middle grade adult fantasy story. This is like an urban fantasy, almost post-apocalyptic Edinburgh style story. Young girl talking to ghosts. I really want to check out the next book in this series. I feel like this could have a great opportunity to be like a fun serialized fiction world because our main character is so great and her like investigative nature. This could really be like mystery of the week vibes, and I think it would work out really, really well. A great fall / Halloween read. And then lastly, I have the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, probably one of the most popular books I've picked up in a while. I haven't finished this yet, but again, the audiobook has been amazing. It has been so disturbing. Probably of all the books I've picked up, this is like the most horrifying from a gruesome point of view. Like there have been many scenes that I'm like, oh my goodness, especially with the audiobook narrator like describing it with such a level of pacing. It's really embedded itself in my brain. But I'm curious about this. I also want to check out more books by this author. His other release really calls out to me. So yes, that is my over 1,000 pages of horror reading over this past week. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye.